The other day I was keeping an eye on my sources about this war, and then I remembered I haven't talked about Russian economy for a while. The main thing in this war that really is not getting enough attention nowadays. That's how they pay their soldiers. That's how they're able to send their dumb iron to the battlefield. That's how they're able to bump billions of USD into Ukraine. In December 2022, the EU introduced a price ceiling for Russian oil, and in February 2023, the EU introduced a ban of Russian oil products. How does it all affect the Russian economy? Do the sanctions work? And as always, I started to look into it, and then I found, drumroll, Russian sanction memes. I'm so sorry. Yes, we will go into the topic, but I want to share this with you, bro. I really like 50 Cent, or as we call him in Russia, 4 million ruble, or 5 million ruble, 8 million ruble. I'll stop, I promise, but there's a few more. Is 8 a lot? Depends on the context. Rubles? No. Million rubles? Still no. Oh, last one, and then we get to the topic. Russian finance minister listening to Putin's speech of how Russian economy is barely affected by this. This is very relevant actually, because about a day ago there was a speech published by Putin where he rambled that sanctions are not working and Russian economy is not going to tank. And unfortunately, I have to say, there is truth and lies in this. The truth is that Russian economy is not going to fall like a stone, but the lie is that the sanctions don't have an effect. Let's go into it. Russia gambled a lot with this war in Ukraine, and the most long-term gamble has been that the Western economies will get tired of supporting Ukraine. Putin's mindset is if he can keep this war going for a long enough time, the Western economies will back away and Ukraine will be on their own, because without the Western support, Putin thinks he can defeat Ukraine. That's a whole other story. But we got this photo from the G7 summit in Hiroshima. 7 of the most powerful countries in the world, and Ukraine, Zelensky in the middle. Ukraine is not part of the G7, but he got an honorary invite, and that sends a clear message to Russia that their gamble has failed. Ukraine has the military and economical support of the Western nations. How about Russian economy? Forgive me about the quality of this photo. It summarizes perfectly what is happening to the Russian economy on a macro level. Income, January to March 2022, 7,163. January to March 2023, a year later, 5,677. That is a 20% loss for the entire country. For 1 year, this is huge. It is not dropping like a stone, but it's a steep decline. Oil and gas income, minus 45% within 1 year. As we know, most of the income comes from oil and gas in Russia. It pays for almost anything. Fossil fuel income is Putin's piggy bank. 45% loss. If I would see these numbers, I couldn't say sanctions doesn't have an effect. Income tax has fallen by 21, almost 22%. In addition to country getting money from oil and gas, which is fallen almost 50, also the taxes are not paying as much. So expenses have risen 34%. That is due to the war. So less money comes in and more money goes out. Russia very rarely in the past 20 years has had deficit budgets. And 2022 was one of those years, and 2023 will be the next, and then it will carry on. When Putin ordered mobilization, 700,000 men fled the country on 24th of February 2022. After that, about 300,000 people left the country, men and women, and the brains, the most intelligent people of Russia. This will not kill a country in the moment, but this has an effect in the future. It will build up. These people will not have children in Russia. They will not pay their taxes in Russia, and they're smart, educated, meaning they had higher paying jobs, doing more valuable work for the state. All of this bunched together, plus 10 years. And I think we're talking about Brezhnev era stagnation. This also didn't happen with 1 year, it took time. We haven't looked at this page for a long time, and I love watching it every now and then. Russian fossil fuel tracker. Payments to Russia for fossil fuels. Globally, since the start of the war, 360 billion USD. That is unfathomably large amount of money they have gotten after the invasion. And unfortunately, almost half of it has come from the European Union, 154 billion. And still counting, actually. It hasn't stopped. This information needs to be talked about because a lot of people think the EU is not paying anymore. Well, we are, unfortunately. Getting rid of oil and gas dependency is like getting rid of any other dependency very fast. It will hurt a lot. These enormous sums for oil and gas Russia got in March and April 2022 are still paying for this war. They made so much money back then, it takes them a lot of time to spend it. As we can see, it's a downward trend, but unfortunately the last 4 months it has been stable. It hasn't fallen like before. Russian income from fossil fuels, I mean. On this chart, we can truly see what's going on. At the height of the prices, the EU paid 772 million per day for fossil fuels for Russia. And as we can see, it's a very steep climb, and I'm glad it hasn't gone up. That means the sanctions in the EU are working. The ban on Russian oil products on 5th of February 2023 is working. And right now we're paying 60 million per day, and it's going down as fast as possible. Who is the biggest riser? Who is paying the most to Russia after the sanctions? Well, this has to be India. And it is not a steep rise, it's a slow and steady one. Russia only started to receive more money from India than the EU in May 2023. And why is that? Because Russia may export and may talk that they have found the Asian markets, but no economy in Asia or all over the world can pay nearly as much as the EU did. Let's put China on this list. You see, money coming from China hasn't really changed much, although Russia has started to import more to China. The thing is, Russia owes so much money to China. They almost export oil and gas there for free. And India just pays low prices. So Asian markets are not a way out for Russia. And we put United States and everything else in here. We see they don't make up much of their revenues. And then there's Turkey, also very stable. From this chart, I read that the Asian markets have not been able to replace the European Union's revenues, and no markets can. Of course, the EU is in oil and gas crisis. The EU is in deficit. We now export LNG from all over the world. Natural gas being liquefied, put on ships, transported to the EU, pumped to the docks and deliquefied. That's an insanely expensive process. And the weird part is the EU has natural gas. That's what I want to talk about today. Ever since we had this energy crisis in Europe and in Estonia 2022 winter, I started thinking, what would a good investor do? He finds opportunities in crisis. So I started researching Western Europe energy companies, natural gas companies. That's when I found MCF Energy. Their ticker is on the screen. Back at the time, MCF Energy was the only company in Europe actively researching new gas fields and planning to drill in 2023. So they were way ahead of their game in the energy crisis, where all of Europe was panicking and trying to buy LNG. At the same time, when we have natural gas deposits in Europe, but we don't drill them because they're dirty. Well, coal is dirty, natural gas is a lot cleaner. This is why the European Union commissioned natural gas as green energy after the energy crisis. Well, what choice do they have? They were in crisis, they needed companies to start researching and drilling natural gas again. And then it's the competition who is faster. MCF Energy really has a lead start in that field. Right now energy prices are low, but winter is coming. That's not Game of Thrones, that is just a fact in Europe. You may get a harsh winter, you may get a soft winter. Last winter was a gamble, it was a soft winter. If it would have been a harsh winter, the prices would have even been higher. I remember getting my communal's bill in December 2022. It was 3 times higher than the month before. Thanks to sky-high energy prices. You know, gas heating. Most of Europe has gas heating. Also, the production runs on natural gas. Winter is coming, the prices will rise, making companies like MCF Energy, who are actively seeking to drill natural gas on the Western European soil, even more vital to fight the energy crisis. Everybody must do their own research before investing in anything, so let's do some research. This is MCF Energy's homepage, delivering large-scale natural gas exploration of Europe's energy crisis. I do believe we need to phase out coal, but I think we're not ready to phase out natural gas yet, especially when the entire Western European economy is based on cheap natural gas. When this is taken away, like it happened with the gas war with Russia, we cannot just jump into solar and wind because you cannot deliver them fast enough. In a few decades we might be ready for that, but now we need natural gas, local natural gas. The answer to Europe's energy security is right beneath the surface. Literally, we have natural gas in Europe, but since we were getting it so cheap from Russia, we didn't invest in it, we didn't explore it. Well, now's the time to change it, because we're not going back to Russia. Let's see what projects do they have. They have 2 big projects, one in Germany, one in Austria. In Germany, MCF Energy bought the German energy company Geneco. Acquisition of Geneco positions MCF Energy as the future leader in natural gas exploration in Germany. 100% ownership of 4 licenses at German natural gas exploration and development projects. Germany needs the natural gas the most in the EU, and MCF Energy is right at the forefront of that. drilling planned at Genaco gas field in 2023. So this year they plan to start drilling, pumping natural gas straight into the European Union's energy. The second project is the Welchau prospect in Austria, and drilling is also anticipated before September 2023 this year. Right now, Europe is fulfilling their gas needs via LNG. That means Canada, USA and Qatar are the biggest exporters to Europe. They will drill the same natural gas in their land, then liquefy it, make it into a liquid form. The process itself is very energy consuming, liquefying the gas. Then they will transport it via ships to Europe. Europe does not have many docks to pump it to the shore and de-liquefy it. European Union is investing billions into building out these docks and infrastructure, but it will take time. It will take a decade at least. While at the same time we have this very same resource beneath our surface. We have natural gas in Austria, in Germany and in many countries actually. And MCF Energy is drilling it. Instead of pumping out money from the European Union to other economies, you're welcome America and Canada and Qatar. I think we should invest into home soil. Of course, we should look at their team, because every company is dependent on their leaders. If they are bad, the company is bad. The dream team, as they call it. Co-founder Ford Nicholson. Deputy chairman of Interoil, which was sold for 2.6 billion in 2016. Co-founder of Bankers Petroleum, which was sold for 575 million. Good enough so far. Co-founder of Nations Energy, which was sold for 1.6 billion in 2006. The guy knows how to build companies. I'll skip the next two because the most interesting I want to get to is Wes Clark, a director. He actually was the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe of NATO 1997 to 2000. He was the commander of NATO when the Operation Allied Force happened. And the European energy crisis is very strongly connected to military and the war in Ukraine. So they have an ex-commander on board who knows how energy can be weaponized against Europe, fighting for Europe to source their energy from Europe. We don't need to look outside, we have it all. When the war started 2022, February, MCF Energy immediately started researching 20 drilling fields in Western Europe. And even before the energy crisis hit in the winter of 2022, they have picked out two, Austria and Germany, and planned drilling there for 2023. So they have done this planning phase and research and acquisitions. Other companies are only starting to do it now because European Union green-lighted natural gas. MCF Energy has a head start. They want to be the dominant natural gas company in Western Europe, and as of now I don't see competition because the field was neglected for decades because of cheap Russian natural gas. My friends, I believe we must phase out coal. And I believe in the long term we can phase out natural gas and turn to wind and solar, but we cannot skip the steps. This will break the European economy if we throw away natural gas without having sufficient alternatives, which we don't yet. Wind and solar are expensive and take time. They do work, but they take decades to build up. This is why I believe companies like MCF Energy have the answer. Let's use what we already have. Natural gas in Europe. This way no other entity can manipulate Europe like Russia and the Soviet Union did, and the prices are low because of local production. LNG prices are high because they have to liquefy it, transport it, de-liquefy it and pump it into economies. We have it all and MCF Energy is fighting for it already. Do your own research, my friends.